This video is brought to you by the Minnetonka Coalition for Equitable Education, or the M.C.E.E. Today we will focus the discussion on how to reduce prejudice in education. We will begin by defining prejudice, its influences, and later describing the various approaches of reducing prejudice within educators and staff. Prejudice is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So if prejudice isn't based on experience, then how do people get it? Well, you obtain prejudice during childhood. So for our video, we have added 4 kids to the middle, and we will demonstrate each of the 4 prejudice building blocks within each child. The first is pre-adult socialization experiences. Basically, that's a fancy phrase that asks a super basic question. What exposure did this little girl have to other races? Did she ever meet anybody of a different race? Were these experiences friendships, antagonistic, or was it just acquaintances? The more positive exposure she has with a race, the less likely she is to have prejudice against them. The second is group interests and identities. What group does this boy belong to, and what is that group's motivations, likes, and accepted culture? Sometimes different cultural groups display certain values which clash with other groups or identities. Essentially, who this boy grows up around can determine how he treats people of different races. The third is political culture. This one is easy. Different political groups view people differently. This little boy has a father who remarks how black women are welfare queens. Welfare queen is a misused myth perpetuated by right-wing ideology to say how black women are lazy and don't want to work, so they go on welfare. This myth is untrue and unfounded, but if the little boy grew up within this political culture, he may develop prejudice. The fourth is mass media portrayal. Easy again. What the media says about a group of people around a child has a huge impact. This little non-binary child constantly watched shows which feature indigenous peoples as the enemy or ruthless warriors. The portrayal is inaccurate to the peaceful life most Native people lived. However, it can create prejudice as Native people being violent or aggressive. So why did we use children? We also wanted to highlight an important point. Do you think these children want to have prejudice? Or do you think they grow up intentionally thinking negatively of other people? No, that's silly. We have to remember if you have prejudice, it's not always your fault. Society has conditioned certain attitudes and beliefs. The real question isn't if someone has prejudice or not. It's about how do you recognize it and how do you reduce it. And to tie it into education, the next part we will discuss the 3 strategies to reduce prejudice in educators. The first strategy is intergroup approaches. Basically, if you want white educators to stop having prejudice, have them form relationships with people in different races. The relationships can be among parents, community members, or fellow educators. This can take 2 forms. The first is the contact hypothesis. The second part is to recategorize. Race is not the only way to categorize people, and the same thing happens with religion. People who are Muslim, Christian, or Jewish may not have religion in common, but they may have 1,000 other things like art, music, or wanting the Vikings to get rid of Cousins as a quarterback. If we make an effort to recategorize, we can also decrease prejudice. The second strategy is individual approaches. Educators can listen to expert discussion, engage in consciousness raising, or target emotion. Consciousness raising targets implicit bias by suppressing thoughts, self-reflection, and positive imagery. If you see a bad driver and you find yourself thinking, "Oh, I bet they're Asian," suppress that thought because it is based on a racist stereotype. It also includes self-reflecting. Is someone's identity affecting how you perceive them or a situation? Finally, create positive imagery around you. One of the Harvard professors in charge of the implicit association test was shocked when she found she had a preference for white people over black. So what did she do? She started to put up pictures, posters, and surround herself in black cultural icons. Why? She wanted to create positive associations to decrease negative implicit bias. Spoilers! It works! The last individual approach is for educators to engage their emotions and develop empathy towards all racial groups by reading or writing exercises. These exercises would be a response to the experiences of distinct racial groups in America. The last method for reducing prejudice is peer discussions. Educators over the summer can create a book club and use workshops like Gorski's Case Studies in Equity, which features over 40 ethical dilemmas which can occur across 11 identities in the school setting. Having educators talk and discuss the dilemmas can also change how they perceive students from various identity groups. Yeah, sounds super great. How does this apply to Minnetonka? Everything? If Minnetonka Public Schools really want to engage in prejudice reduction, they need to start employing all of the strategies above including the intergroup, individual, and peer approaches. We also want to put a little caveat in this video. We recognize that there are a ton of various identities, and while we focus mainly on race today, there are a lot of different groups that people can have prejudice against. So you can feel free to watch the video and substitute different identity groups and different strategies. Thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to follow the M.C.E.E on our social media.